So Ashling Thompson, thanks very much for joining us. How are you keeping?
I'm good, thanks. I'm not too bad now. Trying to settle back into things, so I'm in good form, yeah.
How can you sum up how the last few weeks have been since the All Ireland win? Have things settled down a bit?
Oh God, they have, yeah. It probably took a week or two to fully recover from the celebrations and things like that, but yeah, definitely settled back in. Like, sure, you're straight back into club, so back down to reality again.
I saw a couple of interviews you did, and you were talking about this one, your sixth All Ireland win, maybe being the sweetest one of the lot. Now you have had a couple of weeks to reflect on it. Like, where does it rank when you compare all the other All Irelands that you've won?
Well, it would definitely be up there. I always said that like captaining my county was probably, it would be hard to beat it. But I just think it that almost feels like it was in a completely different time altogether.
Mm.
I guess we went through a period where it was almost 5 seasons where we went without winning one. So it was almost like we forgot how to win at that point, and even just forgot the feeling of winning. We were just so used to getting beaten that like you just you forget those moments, you forget what it feels like. So I just think coming back, I guess, from the ACL, having to fight my way back onto the field, and I thought, I suppose, yeah, I was just very, very happy with how the season went in terms of my performances, and I'd say it was probably the most consistent I felt anyway in a season. So I think just to top it off then by winning, on the day was just unbelievable. So again, it was coming from not knowing how to win to coming back to that position and that feeling, and I guess coming from the ACL just made it that bit sweeter.
Mm. And like you're probably a different person than you were, when when you go back to 2015, it's such a long time ago, and obviously you were captain then, but you would have enjoyed a lot of success, particularly early on in your career, like with club and county, and then, as you said, you would have had a few years with Cork, especially when you weren't having that success. So, like, what were those years like? I'm interested in, especially when you win a lot early in your career and you get used to winning and you expect to win, and then you have a few years after that where you're not necessarily enjoying the same success. Do you still have the same enjoyment? Do you have the same drive? Do you kind of have doubts then about can we get back to the top? Like, what were those few years like for you mentally?
Yeah, I would say that probably in the beginning it was really tough mentally. Again, when you come from so much success, especially at both club level and intercounty level, and then you just hit a lull, and 1 year becomes 2 years, 2 years becomes 3 years. So, and then I guess when you are just so naturally competitive anyway, as a squad and just as an individual alone, it's very hard to take that, and then you start asking those questions like, will we be able to get back there again? Do we have the same players? Like, will we be able to make a good transition? Because we did lose a lot of key players, a lot of like you said, Arena Buckley's, Breach Corkery's, Jim O'Connor's, Anna Geary's, like they're massive, massive players to lose, and we lost them all in such a short period of time. That the question was always going to be asked, like, would we be able to produce the same sort of quality again? Um, but you know what? I always say, just looking back on it, that you don't learn a whole pile from winning. It's kind of in those dark periods where you're not winning, and you just need to find that 1%. But it could be over a long period of time, but eventually it does pay off. But even from an individual standpoint too, you kind of say, right, I need to maybe clock, or do I need to go down the road of my strength and conditioning? Do I need to look at my nutrition? There's so many factors on an individual basis too that you start looking at. Whereas I
Mm.
feel like if you were just in a constant cycle of success, you wouldn't look for those 1%. So to me, it's a blessing and a curse, but to me, more of a blessing, because I don't think from an individual standpoint that I'd be in this position physically or mentally if it wasn't for that 5 year period.
Mm.
Because again, you just look at so many other factors, not just on the pitch, not just the management, not just the coaches. You have to look at yourself, like you have to turn around and say, right, am I doing everything in my power that I can to be the best athlete that I can be for my team? And that's just what I felt like over the 5 year period was, I went away and I got my strength and conditioning coach. I got more into my nutrition. I used as many resources that I possibly could just to try and dive deeper into those things. So yeah, it definitely paid off in the finish.
Mm. That's interesting. So, like, as an athlete and just looking at yourself, what were the little areas that you looked to improve? Like, can you give any specifics, say, around your S&C or your nutrition, or things that you would have dialed up on a bit more in the last few years, and just to try and get those little 1%ers, as you said, and make you a better player? Like, was there anything in particular that you would have done around, I don't know, supplements, or how you trained in the gym, or your diet and things like that would have helped you a little bit along the way?
Yeah, I would say obviously the strength and conditioning was a huge part of it. So I started working with Adrian O'Brien. He's from Kilmallock. That would be his
Mm.
local club, and he was with the Tipperary footballers this year, the men. He was with the Clare Hurlers last year. So he's obviously been a massive, massive help in that sense. Like, he's probably one of the best strength and conditioning coaches that you'd find in the country. So he's at a completely different level altogether that you would probably see just on a regular basis. And then in terms, definitely nutrition side of it, the food side of it, just completely cleaned up. I did a small bit of work with Daniel Davy, just to get
Mm.
kind of an idea of what I should be eating in terms of my performance. So, it was pretty straightforward really, but just trying to get my macros right, my carbs, my proteins, and my fats, and trying to, like, looking at my body composition too, and not being 2% fat or anything like that, but
Mm.
just trying to get myself in the best shape possible, and then leaning towards competition. Like, you'd eat more carbs, and you kind of keep the same levels of protein. That was more so around my ACL, I suppose. But I think, yeah, just probably meeting Dara as well is a big factor. Especially from the nutrition side, he would always take the credit in terms of my nutrition, because we never had a nutritionist really. We still actually don't have a nutritionist with Cork.
Right.
Um, so I took all that knowledge from what Dara, like, they obviously have a full-time nutritionist. So I took everything that Dara knows and I brought it into my everyday life. So I would be very, very good in terms of my nutrition. And yeah, supplementation then as well is a big one. Like, creatine. I've introduced that now for a good while, and whey protein, obviously. And then you have your omegas, in terms of inflammation, stuff like that. But vitamin D, what else? I take zinc as well for immunity. I don't take any vitamin C's or anything like that. I'd look at
Mm.
zinc more so for immunity. And yeah, it's again, those are all things that you kind of learn over a period of time too. Like, I would have taken multivitamins in the past, or vitamin C's and stuff like that. But you kind of, you learn a lot. You learn a lot along the way, and age, I suppose, comes into that too. Like, so.
Mm.
Yeah, those are kind of the key things that I've made, that the big choices that I've made. But I would say that the biggest thing is my strength and conditioning coach, just the quality in terms of him, and then down to my nutrition for sure.
And like, to go out and get your own S&C coach, like, I'm sure you have someone with Cork that would train you in that aspect, but for you to get your own one, then it's a big kind of step for you individually. Like, you're going to get so much from that, working with someone one-on-one. What was the thinking behind that? Like, did you feel you were at a stage where you wanted to go to another level in terms of your S&C, or you just wanted to pick up some new things, or what was your thought process behind all that?
So yeah, again, strength and conditioning is something that we didn't really have full time, even in the last 5 years.
Really?
It's
Okay.
definitely something that we incorporated, but I wouldn't say that it was really like knuckled down to an individual basis. It's kind of just a collective thing that we'd be doing together.
Mm.
So, and every individual has different needs. So, and obviously the biggest factor was the fact that I live so far away from Cork City. I'm well over an hour from Cork, so it wouldn't make sense for me to be sitting into my car, going down to Cork City
Yeah.
to do a collective session. And I think it was more so coming to the latter end of my career as well. I know that I've only very few little years left, very few, I've very little
Mm.
time. And I suppose 5 years ago, I would have thought that I wouldn't have made it to 34. Like, it was probably at this point that I would have thought that I'd be retired. So I think that there was a lot of years that I regretted a lot of things in my career, and I think that if I came to a point where I retired and didn't look into being at my best as an athlete, I would seriously regret it. So I just think you put so much effort and time and sacrifice into the sport that you might as well, finish at the pinnacle, like finish in your greatest shape. And that was probably the one factor that pushed me into that choice of having my own strength and conditioning coach. Was just, I want to be at my best. I don't want to have any regrets, like, when I do finish up.
Mm. Yeah, it's funny because, when you're younger in your career, and like, you're in your early 20s forever, and you think it's going to last forever, and you're a bit more carefree about everything, and then once you get a bit older, then you see the clock ticking a little bit, and you almost want to maximise every year that you have, because you know it's not going to last forever, and you don't want to be looking back with regrets. So for you, was it a case that probably the ACL injury, maybe when you were 32, and then all of a sudden people are probably saying, you know, she might be finished, she might not make it back, you're looking at a 12-month rehab. But I think you said in a few interviews that it never crossed your mind at all that you were going to retire. Like, was it straight away your mindset pretty much once you got the news, I think it was a club game you were playing when you got the injury, that I'm 100% making it back here and I'm going to maximise everything and do my best to get back as a better athlete once I do make it back?
Yeah, exactly. I think the first thing I thought of was I started counting 9 months and where would I be
Yeah,
the following year. That was the first thing that came to my head is, right, I'll be back in June, July. Like, it wasn't even a case of thinking, God, am I finished up here now? I've been very lucky throughout my career. I've never had a serious injury. Never anything really, only like soft tissue or something like that. I've never even pulled, a hamstring and been out 8 weeks. Like, I've been so lucky in that sense. So it was never something that crossed my mind that could ever happen. So when it did, I was actually quite surprised, even in my own mind, like that. I never even thought twice about throwing in the towel. And straight away, it was just like getting on to, Dr. Con Murphy in Cork, like trying to get that, get scans and get to Raymore and Santry as fast as I could. Again, to try and make it back for that 9 or 10 month mark. Now, obviously, once I spoke to my physio, like, he had different plans, just in terms of it's not a 9 month case thing and you're just straight back in playing. Like, you need to
yeah,
give it at least 10. You've the 9 month mark, but then you need at least 4 weeks, like, in contact training to be eligible to play again. So, yeah, there's just the focus. I think too, we were after coming off the back of a loss with Cork that year. We just lost by fine margins to Kilkenny by a
yeah,
point in the final, and it was literally the first club game, 10 minutes into the game, where I did the ACL. So, I think that year we were probably very unlucky to lose. I don't think we were 100% coming into that final, but I could definitely see throughout the season, and even, that transition for 4 or 5 years was just, you could definitely see that there was something brewing, like there was something coming with Cork. And again, it's like, you always have the questions like, will we be able to produce the same players, but will we be able to produce the same mentality as well that Cork team has always had, just, in terms of being ruthless and like the want to win. And will they see that they can be successful? Because obviously confidence and mentality is huge now in the sport. So I think that year I could really see that girls, they had that spark. And I remember saying in an interview after that once this team gets over the line, they're going to be very special. Like, it's going to be a team that's very hard to stop. Like, so you could see the talent that was there. And that was another driving factor. I could see it. And also, even just the older players, I could also see that they had a new spark. And that there was never anyone going to be finishing up anytime soon. So I think, yeah, there was just no talk of anyone walking away or retiring at that point. And that was our fourth year on the trot being beaten. So I just think there was, yeah, we could all see that there was something coming, like there was something good in the work. So, yeah, the minute it happened, I just said, like, game on here, like, we just have to get back now as good as we can and drive for that All Ireland.
I want to get back to the injury in a second, but just something you mentioned there about the kind of ruthless streak of the Cork team when you first came into it, and like, obviously they were enjoying a lot of success when you came in. Was that something you recognised initially? Like, you would have been very young when you came through, or is it only kind of when you look back after a few years that you go, the likes of the characters you had in that dressing room and their ability to get over the line in big games and stuff? Was it only afterwards when you could appreciate it, or when you're in the moment, you're sitting in the dressing room and you're on the pitch with these players? Do you look around and go, these are absolute winners, like they'll do anything to win?
I could actually recognise it at the time because Milford were actually quite similar. Our club team was pretty much an inter-county team, to be honest. I think majority of the girls had played inter-county at some level or at some point in their careers. So, that's the type of team that Milford Camogie was at the time. Like, you had 20 or 30 players that were just extremely ruthless, like would do anything to win. Their will to win was just incredible, and then to translate that, or to go from transfer from one team to the next. And to be honest, it wasn't something that I really had in my plans to go back playing with Cork, but it was only one of the girls that just told me, look, you might as well give it a shot and see, things might end up really good. Like, so I just said, grand, I'll give it a chance. But then, yeah, straight away I could just see that, like, even just being out on the pitch, like the talent was just incredible. And if I was off my game, there was going to be 10 players on that Cork team that were going to be on it. Like, so I think the opportunity was too big to throw away at that point. And yeah, you could definitely see it straight away, especially when you do go from one team to the next. It's always very evident to see like the two environments and how they work. But yeah, it was a very easy transition to go from one to the other.
And just talk to me about your rehab process then. Like I was reading in for you, Dave, you were saying there was often weeks when you were training 5, 6, 7 days a week in terms of, recovery, getting to the pool, ice baths, and then all the rehab, getting up to Santry and everything. Give me an average week during the course of that rehab. What would it have looked like for you? What kind of stuff would you have been working on?
So the very beginning is obviously it's very different to what you'd be doing 4 or 5 months in. So at the start, you're literally just trying to get the mobility back in the legs. So things are very basic in terms of just trying to straighten your knee and bend it up to a certain point. And even just trying to get the strength back into it. So you might be just pushing a med ball a med ball against the wall, just simple things like that. Um, but still, there's a lot of sets, there's a lot of repetitions, especially at the start, even throughout the 9 months, to be honest. So, I think in the beginning, a session was taking me the bones of 2 hours.
Right.
It really was. Because again, if I'm told to take 2 minutes of a rest, like I'll take the 2 minutes. Like, I'm very,
Mm.
very particular in that sense, probably a bit OCD. Like I'd be the same in the gym even at the moment. Like if it's down as a 2 minute rest, like I won't, because you'd want to be 100% going into the next set. And that's the way I look at it. Like a lot of people think when you overlook even those small things of not taking the full rest, like you're actually doing yourself no favors because you'll only be at 70% doing the next set. So
Yeah.
I'm just a bit probably too OCD in that sense. But yeah, it starts off very basic, but again, that could be 4 or 5 days a week. And at the start, I was actually at home doing those things because I didn't need to be in a gym. I wasn't using any equipment, so there's no weights or anything involved in terms of the first, terms of the first block of training. It's all basically body weight and just again trying to get that mobility back into the knee. So I found that the toughest and I couldn't drive at the start. Obviously after
Right.
surgery you can't drive, so that was probably the hardest. Like looking at the four walls, like everyone works at home and there was nobody here, so I was on my own just at that for 2 hours and sweating. So yeah, that was definitely the toughest part. And once you go back into the gym though, it definitely gets easier from there. It's far more enjoyable than it is in the first block of training.
Yeah, and like obviously at the start you're just focusing on the knee itself, but were there other aspects then of just your S&C that you were looking at targeting? Because you obviously, as a player, you're never going to have that block of time to actually just work in the gym, work on different aspects of your game that you're almost training all year round between club and county. So was there other things you would have focused on when you're in the gym? Did it give you an opportunity to develop other sides of your game or just think about things a bit differently in terms of how you were training and stuff like that during that period?
Yeah, well, I guess you do so much legs. You're predominantly doing legs. Upper body doesn't even come into things like until way later, even up to the 9 month mark. It was basically just legs for 9 months. Like
Right.
so, now you'd obviously tip away with maybe one upper body exercise in the session. Like obviously you've 4 or 5 sessions in the week, so there might be one upper body exercise, but it's all legs. So again, like when do you do leg day? Like 4 or 5 days a week. So
Yeah.
I could definitely see a difference in terms of my speed even at the moment, like in
Okay.
terms of my speed, even when I step players, I think even the younger girls are quite surprised at how fast I am. At times. But again, yeah, it's just like when do you get the opportunity to do legs 4 and 5 days a week, and then you're doing so much plyos as well, like plyometrics come into it.
Right.
You're doing a lot of accelerating, decelerating, cutting. Like again, you just don't get that opportunity. A lot of speed sessions, a lot of running sessions. Um, Now upper body, in my opinion, well, especially in female sport, it's not a huge factor. Like again, it's all, well, you would say in the core and the lowers, like it's all in the trunk and the lowers. And
Mm.
so to me, that had a massive impact. Like that's why I always say that I've never felt as good as I feel now, and I honestly think it's just from coming from that work. Like, and then of course, recovery is a massive part of it too, working on your sleep. Obviously, well, that's how I got into taking magnesium glycinate. I find that incredibly helpful. It
Okay.
has a much higher absorption rate than your regular magnesium. So even just again tapping into that side of things, like getting my recovery, I probably would have never would only for the ACL. I would have taken magnesium in the past, but it would have been a very low absorption rate in terms of my magnesium. So I, those are things that I looked into too, was just getting the best absorption, the best form of magnesium that I could find, or the best form of zinc in terms of my immune system, just things like that. Again, your nutrition has a huge part, so my protein intake would have been much higher. Again, going to Daniel Davy, just finding out what I should be eating, my macros. I wouldn't overemphasize. I wouldn't be out with the weighing scales on that stuff now. I would have obviously previously, but that now I go by
Mm.
eye. Just eat as much as I can in terms of protein and everything else. So, and then yeah, your recovery. So your ice baths. Luckily the pool that I go to has a plunge pool, so I do the contrast therapy like just
Yeah.
in the place that I go to. I find contrast therapy very good. Sauna and into the plunge, and yeah, I bought a set of Armatech then as well, the boots, so I have a full recovery system. But again, it's all those little things that I never would have done, never even touched that 5 years ago. And even if I don't look better than what I did 5 years ago, I most certainly feel it. And again, if I walked away in the morning, like I'd have no regrets, because it's those 1% like that I was missing before, that just, it felt like there was just an empty space. Like it felt like I was missing something, and now I don't feel that way. Like, and I can thank the ACL for it.
Yeah, and I think people will find that really interesting. Like we obviously, from the outside, you don't see the kind of work that you put in, but then stuff like around recovery and things has become so important over the last probably 5 6 years in intercounty, in the intercounty games. So like all that kind of stuff as well that people don't appreciate. It's a lot of time and a lot of thinking you're doing in terms of tweaking things and finding out what works for you as well. And I'm sure there was things you would have done, and then you're like that, yeah, that doesn't work for me, and you take something else. And like you were saying about the magnesium, and then you're switching it up a little bit. But you made it back then. So like last year, obviously you were coming on. I think was the quarterfinal your first game when you came off the bench.
Yeah,
All-Ireland
it
quarterfinal.
was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And how were you feeling? Like it's obviously when you haven't been playing, and you might have done a bit of running beforehand, but once you get back to actual playing a game, like match fitness is going to be completely different then. How was the body feeling when you were coming into those games? Because it's at the latter stages of the championship as well, so everybody else is flying it. How did you feel?
I actually felt really good in training and everything. The hardest thing I found that season was watching the matches. So
Yeah,
I find that when you're actually on the sideline, I think there was our psychologist was telling me there was some study done on it as well. I think it was in the NFL, that when you're sitting on the line, you actually use far more energy, because you're watching everything that's happening. Whereas when you're actually on the pitch and in the game, you're only focusing on yourself and nothing else. So
yeah,
I
yeah,
feel like you waste so much energy. Now, again, I feel like that comes down to the individual though. Like I would be picking everything and like, shouting probably, and, like egging people on, and we should do this, or we should do, probably getting too involved. Like, but I found it very hard to pull myself back from it. Of course, when you're on the line, you're not in control. So it's probably more so the case that I wasn't in control of what was happening. But, um, again, I could see that throughout the season, that I was, um I wouldn't say wasting a lot of energy, but you just put a lot of energy into it when you are on the line, because you're just so engaged
mm,
in what's happening from 1 to 15. It's not just your own job. So you're not even focused on what your job is when you do come in, because I guess naturally I would just expect myself to know that. So yeah, even if you're on the pitch 15, 20 minutes, you're absolutely gassed. Like, when I came in, like, because I remember even for the final, there was a question like, would I start? And then I was thinking to myself, like, okay, do I start and run the risk of coming off, or is it better
yeah,
to have me there for the end? So like that was always going to be a huge question going into the semi-final and final, like what is the best thing to do here? And my gut was always telling me that, like, I would rather be there at the end of the game. Like, would you rather see me coming in at the end and like just, try and get through the 40 minutes, 45 minutes, and if we're still, at, an arm's length of winning, like, then it's going to be brilliant, like, to bring. And you know what? I think we had five of this year's starters, on the bench last season. So our bench
Okay.
was ridiculously strong. You had Laura Hayes was
Yeah.
on the bench, Orla Cahalane, Cleena Healy, myself, and Orla Cronin. Sorry, she didn't play this year, but she again would have been a starter for us for years, like an incredible athlete. So it wasn't just me. We had five to come off the bench that were starting all along. So yeah, that was a huge boost. But I would say for myself, like just mentally and physically, I found that even after 15, 20 minutes, I was gassed because you're just so involved in the play and what's going on when you're on the sideline. So I would find it a lot easier just to start and concentrate on myself. Like,
And just in terms of the feeling last year, like obviously to come back from an injury last year, it was a huge achievement just to make it onto the pitch and to get on the All-Ireland final. But then this year, you had such a big role winning player of the match in the final, and I think most players would say, like every player would probably say, you want to be starting and you want to be playing the full game. So was there a big difference in terms of the emotions at the end of the final this year compared to last year?
oh, 100%. Last year, it was funny because I guess the game was over by the time when I came
Yeah.
in, and it's not often you see that happen. It's never actually you'd see that happen in an All Ireland final now. I think maybe the occasion got to Waterford. Waterford aren't that bad, like as in we've gone toe to toe with Waterford over the last couple of seasons, and they're 10 times better than what they produced on that final day. So that was very surprising. And yeah, like I mean, the game was over after 40 minutes. So I think that was probably a huge factor in terms of, the winning feeling and the final whistle. Whereas I think if it was a 1 or 2 point game, it probably would have been a totally different emotion for me. I think the semi final actually that felt like, I had been on the pitch for 60 or 70 minutes because I think in that semi final against Galway, we hadn't beaten them in God, I don't know how many outings of championship. I don't know, was it 8 or 9 games, or so. It was an incredible stat anyway that we hadn't beaten them. So I think getting over Galway in the semi final was the biggest game that we were going to face that season, just in terms of that mental battle. Um, so yeah, the final was very strange because again the game was over, and it's just like Amy O'Connor was incredible that day, and it was just everything was just heightened, and it was a strange feeling, I guess, not to be starting, not to be there, and just to come in and kind of you're just like you're just another player, like you're just a number, like that's how it felt. So that's strange because I've never been in that position before, and this year then obviously to come from that moment. And then I guess throughout the winter, I always said to myself that I'm not going to lose now what I've gained over the season. So I kind of pushed through the winter, and then the league was, the league is always a bit of a tough one for us, but we don't go back till January roughly, so we're a lot later than other teams. And then obviously throughout the season, I just wanted to make sure that I was tipping away during the Munster Championship, and then come to the All Ireland series, I wanted to be going game by game and improving each day. And again, that's when I said earlier I haven't felt that good in terms of my consistency this season. And I think that was, even mentally, I was kind of thinking to myself, I really want to end it on a high here. Again, game by game, but constantly improving. Like, there's probably games in the past where I could have done something different for that 10-minute period, and I just didn't want that to happen this season. I'd worked too hard for it. So um I have different things that I'll bring in, like if I find that I'm not on the ball for 10 minutes, there's certain things that I'll do in the game that will get me back into the game. And small
Okay.
little learnings like that. So I just
Yeah.
wanted to make sure that I kept the consistency throughout the season, and then I suppose to end it in Croke Park the way we did. The feeling was just incredible. Not from at the final whistle, to be honest. It was just thank God it's over, because it was probably one of the most intense finals I've ever played in. It was
Yeah.
incredible, like from both sides, from both teams, and it was the intensity of the day was just it was crazy. So at the final whistle, that was the emotion. But obviously later on, I was just very proud of where I came from, I suppose.
And what kind of stuff would you do then if you're not getting on the ball for a few minutes? I think a lot of players who are listening will find that interesting as well. What little things would you do in terms of trying to get yourself back into the game? Whatever you feel
Yeah.
like you can share.
Well, I suppose there's a lot that you can be doing off the ball,
Yeah.
that gets you back into it. So I think the more time you find in your own head is the worst position you want to be in. So you never want to find yourself just standing there waiting for the ball to come or waiting for something to happen, because the more time you have to yourself, the more you're going to be in your own head. So like I'll just, even if it means just chasing somebody, chasing a ball, or like connecting with someone, getting a simple pop pass. Like even, and if there is somebody that's glued to you, that's fine, because at least you're looking at trying to get away from that opponent. Like you're still focusing on something that's game based rather than being in your own head. So yeah, I'll make a tackle, I'll make a hook, I'll make a block, I'll look for a connect, I'll make a pop pass. I'll take a sideline, even if somebody's like I'll run over and I'll take a sideline. It's just something to get yourself back into the game physically. And I think the head then takes care of itself. Once you're doing something physically, in that period, like then I feel like that helps an awful lot. Like so.
I want to just bring you back to the end of the 22 final as well. I know it's probably not the happiest of memories for you, losing so gnarly to Kilkenny. You had a chance at the end of the game to equalise, and it didn't go over. But what was that like? How do you process that as a player? You've obviously been there and done it. At that stage of your career, you'd won loads of All-Irelands, but how do you process that in the aftermath? Is it the kind of thing that you can move on fairly quick, or do you dwell in it for a while, or what's just going through your head in the hours and days after that match?
I would say that the moment replayed in my mind over and over again. And it's analysis. Sometimes video analysis can be the worst thing in the world, because like the picture is a lot different on the pitch than what it is on a screen.
Yeah.
So just the image of it, the picture of it, even the run up to the ball or how the ball broke, and the moment itself just replayed over and over and over and over in my head. Like, what could you have done different? Like, you could have taken him on. Like, there was only two in front of you. Like, had a lot more time to settle on the ball to strike. All these things like come into your head of what I could have done. But I'll never forget, Amy O'Connor was interviewed. I'm pretty sure it was her. I hope I'm not saying the wrong person. But she was interviewed after that game. And when she said, that was probably one of the things that's when I was like, threw it off then to one side. She said that she wouldn't have wanted anyone else on the ball in that moment. That like, to be fair, that I had the balls to take the shot. That she felt like if it was anybody else in that moment, they wouldn't have the balls to take it. That they probably would have doubled back. And like, to me, that honestly, those words meant everything to me. Just as a teammate and a friend, like for somebody actually to say that, because she knows probably that I would have heard that at some point, her saying that, and I felt like she said it just, because maybe she knew the impact that it would have on me, that like, it doesn't matter about the shot. Like, you need these moments in your career. You do. You never want to be the person that takes the shot that goes wide to lose an All-Ireland final. You don't, and you never expect that to happen. But these moments have to happen in your career. Again, they're all things that I'd never take back, because I wouldn't be in the same position. And again, for my teammate to turn around and say something like that was just incredible. And it definitely stood to me, like straight away. It just rolled off the tongue, or rolled off. It didn't even bother me at that point, because it just gave me so much confidence in knowing that, like, if that's what my teammates think, then it really doesn't matter what happened that day. What matters is how I can actually bounce back from it. It's all reaction.
Yeah.
Like, how are you going to react to that moment? I can't say that I'll make sure I'll never miss that shot again, like, but again, you need those moments in your career. Like, they're all important factors in victory. Like, and so again, you just need to take what you can take from it and move on.
Yeah, that's class as well. I'm sure it's the kind of thing that brings a group closer when your teammates are standing up for you as well, and that kind of thing.
Absolutely.
I just want to touch on as well, like, you would have talked a lot in interviews about probably earlier in your career being targeted a bit on the pitch and opponents trying to wind you up, and back then maybe you would have reacted and struck out and things like that. But I know you've said yourself that you got a lot better at it, and I don't know when the last time you've even been booked in a game has been, but it's definitely been a good while. So, like, are there any little techniques that you would have used in terms of not reacting to opponents, or what kind of, like, how have you dealt with that over the course of your career, being targeted on the pitch? How do you avoid being drawn into kind of heated moments like that on the pitch?
Well, I would say that to me, if a player is going to take the time and energy out of their game to focus on another player, especially an opponent, To me, it's a massive compliment, first of all, because you're a threat. If you're not a
Yeah.
threat, they're not even going to entertain you. So to me, you're a threat. So automatically, to me, that's a compliment. Um, and then after that, yeah, it's just like I would never take the time and energy out of my performance to focus on something else, because I know that, like, again, I'm putting energy into something that my energy is needed with my own team, my own squad, my own job. Like, I'm not going to put 2% or 5% or 10% of my energy into somebody else. So I know, again, the one thing I don't do is react. I'll never react. They can absolutely tear the clothes off me and I won't react. Because they'll get tired of it. Eventually they'll get tired, and when it's not working, they just won't do it. They'll stop. And look, if they keep doing it, that's fine. But I know that they're putting so much energy into that by the time the game moves on, they're actually tired of it. Like, they're tired of it and they can't keep up. It's like having negative thoughts or thinking about things that you can't control before a game, thinking about the weather or the referee or something like that. You're putting energy into something that's not going to have a factor on the game, like, and it's not
Yeah.
going to upset you. It's not going to take energy from you. It's going to take energy, you know. At the end of the day, somebody doing that targeting you, it's only taken away from their own game. So, like, take it as a compliment. And what I would say is just try your best to not react. And again, that comes with age too, though. That comes with maturity, and that comes with realizing that, I'm on a team here. I'm playing for Cork. I'm not playing for Ashling Thompson. So, like, you reacting to somebody else is only affecting your teammates, and it's affecting their performance. And if they see somebody, who's experienced and 34 years of age reacting to somebody on the pitch, then, that's going to affect them. Like, that's psychologically, it's going to affect them. They're going to say, geez, Ashling's rattles. It's going to have an impact on their game. So, yeah, again, a lot of it comes with age and maturity, but it's just you need to weigh up the pros and cons. Like, if I react, I'm buying into what they want. Like, they want me to react, but don't give them what they want. Like, so I think eventually when you just run around and forget that they're even there, eventually they get tired of it. So that's the only thing that I do, to be honest.
Yeah. And like that's probably the advice a sports psychologist would give you as well. Just control what you can control. And just earlier on when you were talking about um, feeling like when you're playing your best, you're not even thinking when you're on the pitch. Would sports psychology have been something that you've delved into over the years? Have you kind of put much thought into it, or worked with many psychologists, with Cork or even individually over the years? And kind of what would you have a process when you're coming up to a big game? How you mentally prepare?
So yeah, we have a psychologist for the last couple of years with Cork, Michelle O'Connor. She's been exceptional, like, unbelievable, and she do everything both as a group and on an individual basis. Um, Now we do a lot of meetings and group sessions, so I do take an arm, like, I take so much from those sessions. And again, I don't like to, like, everyone is different, so a lot of girls would do one-to-ones probably frequently. I don't like to saturate my game with, certain things. Like, I'll take what I can take from her. And but again, like, I might have a conversation with Michelle out after a session, and it's like as if it's just, a normal conversation. But at the end of the day, it's still a psychology session, because she's still the
Yeah.
psychologist, even when you're having just what you feel like is a normal conversation. She's still being a psychologist. So to me, that's just as good as having one-to-ones with her. I wouldn't have had many, to be honest. I had one all right coming up to the final, and I guess it's because, like, All Ireland final day is, you can't say it's just another game, because it's not. Like, finals are, but I'm talking about the environment and the atmosphere in Croke Park is just completely different to what you'd meet throughout the season. So, and then, yeah, for, like, let's say for the last few years, maybe 5 or 6 years, or more even, we had a psychologist that just came in to do a group session maybe once or twice in the season. So, um, a lot of it you kind of had to do on your own, or you'd find on social media, or it was just different things like that. I wouldn't say that um, I had sessions with different people or went out of my way to focus on it. But when Michelle came in, again, perfect timing, like 2 years ago, she'd just been incredible. So yeah, like, having a rant after training is just as good as having a one-to-one with her or a group session, and just taking different things from that. Again, we'd have many group sessions, like, throughout the season. So yeah, it's been a huge help in terms of my what I do before. Again, if there's just anything bothering me, like coming up to the final or any sort of a big game, Michelle is there like 24/7. Like you can ring her and book in whatever you need to talk about or do. So, and then mental preparation for games. Yeah, one thing I do is I don't talk about. I won't talk about it. Like if I need to get something off my chest, I will in terms of the session or how it went, or if I'm feeling a certain way or negative, like I will rant to it either to Michelle or Dara, one or the other.
Yeah.
But there's nothing I'd say, like a lot of the analysis and stuff like that, like I'd write down everything in terms of my job and what I do.
Okay.
And I do a lot of, I'm more so a visual learner than anything else. I wouldn't be someone like, I'll write things down and stuff like that and I'll remember it, but I might read over it once or twice, but I wouldn't be the type that would go back and write again and read. And, I find that just saturates my brain. Like, so
Yeah.
I'm very visual in that sense. Like I look a lot at analysis and stuff like that, and then I'll bring the psychology side into it. So, again, and I'll just write that down and I kind of remember it. And if I need to refresh my brain, I'll just go over my notes, like that kind of a thing.
Mm. Yeah, I think people find that interesting. Just a last couple for you. I think, have you said already you'll be back next year for the 3-in-a-row push?
Yeah, I will. I kind of was, well, not that my mind ever changes, to be honest. After the final whistle this year, I was like, thank God. It was probably the first year that I said, thank God it's over. Like usually straight away you'd have thoughts like, what am I going to do now of a Tuesday and Thursday if I'm not traveling to
Yeah.
Cork? So, well, last year was different because I didn't play club. Um, I I just left it out for the season. Now I kind of, was a good and a bad thing because obviously you want to keep the muscle memory in terms of coming out back from the ACL. I did a small bit with UCC, all right, coming back before the preseason, but yeah, I stayed away from club. Um, Again, we wouldn't be as strong as we used to be. We're actually junior now at the moment, so that was probably one of the reasons why I stayed away. Just in terms of we wouldn't have the same resources either in terms of physio or anything like that. So it
Mm.
was just precautionary kind of stuff. Like last season, I only played a total of 50 minutes with Cork. So yeah, it just that was the reason for that. But yeah, this season I just kind of said after the game, Jesus, thank God that's over. Like it felt like the longest year of all time. So going back into Cork is probably, I wouldn't be looking forward to it now. Like if you told me we were going in next week, but I think yeah, when the preseason comes along, like you're so unstructured in the winter. Even mentally, like I'd be looking forward to it, just having that structure. Like, so
Mm.
yeah, look, I'll go back in the preseason, see how things go, and if the body is good, like we'll have to have a rattle. But I'm not thinking of a 3-in-a-row job. I'm just thinking of getting myself in the best position I can physically, again, mentally, and being consistent. And if that means an All Ireland, then great.
Mm. I was just looking back over your Laker Gale this morning, and just one line you said about you'd worry about what you'll have to do when you do have to retire eventually. So whether that's 2 years down the line or whatever it is, have you given much thought to how you'll fill that void in your life of not having intercounty camogie? Is coaching something you'll go into, or have you thought about it at all?
I haven't really thought about it. Like, to be honest, since I came out of secondary school, I've been the same. Like, I've never been the type that said, I want to do this or I want to do that. I just take it year by year. Yeah, I've never been certain in terms of what I want to do for the rest of my life. But I could definitely see myself in some form of coaching role. Um, Definitely involved with a team set up, like maybe on the strength and conditioning side, maybe in a gym setting, stuff like that, maybe in a manager role, who knows? But I couldn't see myself walking away from sport entirely. Again, that might change, like once I do finish up, but I couldn't see it. I would have to be involved, I feel, in some way, shape, or form. So, yeah, whether it's a coaching role in terms of strength and conditioning or maybe not hurling or a managerial role, something like that. Even the psychology of the sport, I'd be very into, but the education or the study side of it, no. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's probably where I would see myself at, like in time.
Yeah, because I know you've done a bit of personal training and stuff as well. So, would you like what kind of coach do you think you are, or you would be? Like, do you take stuff from other coaches because you've worked with a lot of coaches over your career and a lot of really good ones as well? So, are there different things you pick from different coaches, or try and stick to your own way and kind of forge your own path?
No, I definitely would take a lot from what I've learned in the past, from different coaches, especially strength and conditioning. Like, you'd have no better mentor than Adrian O'Brien anyway, I can tell you that much.
Mm.
He is incredible. But yeah, like 100%, everything is like what you learn along the way, and being involved with different coaches, especially when you're at an elite level. There's so much you can take from it. Um, and that's kind of it with coaching anyway, and strength and conditioning and stuff like that. Everything you do take from what you learn like throughout the years, it's kind of, I'd say it's very seldom that you find someone that only has their own theories. And to be honest, I just don't think it is the way to go in general anyway. Like, you can't just have your own theories on sport. Like, you have to take it from experience, especially as a player. So yeah, I would find that everything I probably know anyway about myself at the moment is from other people. It's not just myself. So
Yeah, brilliant. Ashling, we'll finish up there. You've been great with your time, so thanks so much for coming on, and congrats again on a brilliant season with Cork. Can't wait to see you again next year. So thanks very much for coming on, and best of luck for everything going forward.
thanks a million for having me.